it's an honor for us to interview a legend in the Park and Recreation field, someone that's been a commissioner for a long time. And we'd like to start out first of all by asking you, what really motivated you to become a commissioner in the first place?
Well, of course, I got into the park work. First of all, I joined the Freeport JCs. We formed a JC chapter. And one of the objectives in forming the JC chapter was that the young people in Freeport, this is in the 1947, 48 approximately, the time, 49 period, the young people in Freeport were unhappy with the city government and so on, wanted more action, more progress and so on. Town was extremely conservative and wanted things to happen. And so we got going into JCs and we decided to form a governmental bodies group and started attending all the school board, the park board, the county board, and the city council meetings. And I was appointed to cover the school board and the park board, along with another young man, and got going to park board meetings. And the reason I was interested in the park board was that my employer, Mr. Arthur Haas, who I worked for, was a commissioner in Freeport. He was a commissioner in the park district for 24 years. But anyway, he was on the board and we were quite interested in it. And he was interested in it and I was interested in it. So we started going to park board meetings, and I attended quite a few park board meetings throughout the years, along with the school board meetings. In 1950 or 1960, I guess it was, I ran for the school board along with about 6 other people. And I didn't make it. I got defeated in the board election. It was a close election, but got defeated. And then the mayor of the city appointed me on the planning commission, and we drew up a new city zoning ordinance. I chaired the committee for the chairing of the zoning ordinance in Freeport, the new zoning ordinance, which was a fairly extensive job. And then we went along, and in 1966, in the summer of '66, Mr. Haas came in and said, "I've been on this for 24 years, I'm going to call it quits." And he didn't ask me, he said, "You're going to run for park board." And I said, "Oh."
And he didn't say you'd have to serve 24 years.
No, he didn't, no. And so I said, "Well, okay." He said, "Come on." He said, "Let's start going to meetings." And from that, the summer of '66 till the spring of '67, I made every committee meeting, every park board meeting, sat in on it from that on till went into the election, and was elected in the '67 to be a park commissioner. And that started it out. And there we go from there on.
So in '97 it will be 30 years.
That's right.
Excellent.
Be 30 years, and so that's the way it went along.
How do you stay involved all the time, especially now, experiencing all that history, and you're as much involved today as you were then, maybe even more so?
Well, I first of all, I enjoyed it a great deal. It's getting elected to the park board was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I mean that seriously. I adopted it more or less as a hobby. I always enjoyed government. It was a lot of fun. And I adopted it as a hobby and really went ahead and worked with the park board in Freeport. Went down to Southern Illinois to a first IAPD study or conference that we had down there. It was a conference on, I can remember it now, it was a conference on accounting and park finance. And so I went out to the conference, and I found that it was extremely interesting of how finances work with the park district and so on. And went back to Freeport and I said, you know, this Association of Park Districts certainly is a very informative group. because at that time, nobody in Freeport went to any of the meetings. We sent our director, but that's the only one that ever went to board meetings, or IAPD meetings. And so from that day on, when we went to IAPD meetings, I can remember we had a meeting in Peoria. It was the first one I went to as a conference. And I think I've been making them ever since. And eventually, I got one and two other board members to go along with us. We went from there on. It's been great.
So you went through all the IAPD various committees, then you served on the IAPD board.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
What year was that?
I got on the IAPD committees almost immediately because, not through the IAPD, but the University of Illinois used to have a commissioner's workshop sponsored by the Department of Leisure Studies, it is now, I think, if I'm right. And at that time, there was Dr. Sapora, Joe Bannon, and all of the different ones that were in the department. And it was at Champaign. We had, and went down to one of them, and we got a discussion on wedding contracts and so on like that. Was on one of them, and got very involved in it, and got appointed. I think Don Bresden was the head of that committee, and Don came over and said to me, "You should be on the committee." I said, "I don't know anything about committees." Well, he said, "You come on and be on a committee." So I was on the committee, and we started working at that time and on different committees, and I worked with Don Bresden, Gene Pomerantz on different committees, and the following year, in 68 or 69, it was following 2 years, so 69, got a phone call and said, "You ought to run for the board of IAPD board." I didn't even know how to run for the IAPD board.
Just a commissioner in a couple of years.
Right, 2 years. And I didn't know how to run for the IAPD board. Well, I said, "I don't know anything about it." "Well, you're going to like it." So, and I think it was Bresden that called me up.
He has a way of doing that.
And you're going to run for the board. So we ran for the board and got elected. And got on the IAPD board. At that time, if I remember rightly, the Park District office was in the bank building down here, First National or something like that. It was in the First National Bank building. The IPRA offices were with us in the same office building, or IPRS.
That was a society.
Yeah, IPRS office was in the same building with us, and in the same office.
And that was 69?
69 or 70, around in there, something like that. And a director of, at that time, the director was a man by the name of Schultz, or Stewart, if I'm rightly, and Schultz was the attorney. I'm trying to remember.
I think Schultz was the executive director.
Executive
And
director.
Bob Stewart was
Stewart, that's right. Stewart was the counsel. And started in at that time and went along, had some, in those days, why, the association, if I putting it mildly, was in the formative stage. It wasn't, it was, lots of things were going on, and had lots of interesting activity. And we went along fairly well for, in 1972, I had a phone call from Bresden again, and I remember this one was Bresden. He called up and he said, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was with the Southern Illinois University, and he was slated on, as vice president to be president of the IAPD. You know, I mean, was in line. And Bresden called up and said, so-and-so has accepted a job in Texas, I think he said. He's not going to be in Illinois any longer. That means that we don't have a candidate for president. He said, I wasn't vice president. I was the board member. He said, you're going to run for president. I said, well, Don, I don't know anything about it. Well, he said, you'll be vice president. You're going to run for vice president. You'll be president-elect next year, I think is the way it worked out. But anyway, So anyway, I ran for president, got elected in '73, and that was the year I was president of the IAPD. And it was really quite an experience. Really quite an experience.
Well, and the amazing thing is that you've continued to serve the association even after being president many years ago. You continue to be very active in the association, representing us in some of the regional meetings, also chair of the nominating committee, and so that's I think that's really respected by people, your continued dedication and involvement. And Mike, what kind of advice do you have for someone who's a new commissioner? You can remember back to those days that you were just elected. What kind of advice do you have for those people as to their journey into this field, and also their role in being a good commissioner?
Well, I think that first of all, being a good commissioner is to really get involved in your park district, to get into it, to meet all the staff, understand the staff, go back and get the minute books for the last couple years, read up on the minutes of the district, find out what's going on, sit down with the director and have several good long talks with him to find out just what is going on, what are the plans of the district, where are you going and where you've been. Sit down with other commissioners and talk over different park district problems. And I think that that's about the way to start out as being a new commissioner. Really, I almost feel sorry for a new commissioner today. They walk in, most of them have no idea what tax levies are, they have no idea what bonding power is, your bond ordinances. They have no idea of different types of laws that we have to live up to and take care of. They have no idea of your plans, your master plan, your many things that go on in the district. And they walk in and they sit down and here's this whole thing coming up and just hitting them in the face, because park district operation today is a big business compared to what it used to be. When I went on the board, it wasn't, well, I can remember when I went to board in Freeport, we had some playground equipment, and in the many parts of our parks we had nice flower beds, and around the flower beds very nicely mowed lawns and signs that said keep off the grass.
That was the philosophy.
Don't walk on it. So commissioners today have a lot more of a challenge than they used to have. And besides, people demand more of the park district needs. They expect recreation, expect activity, they expect a lot of things to happen. In the older days, people didn't expect to sponsor a whole lot of, at least they didn't in Freeport, they didn't expect to sponsor a whole lot of recreational activities. When I went on the board, we had a part-time recreational director who was a coach in high school, and he ran the recreational program from the latter part of May until the 1st of September. And after that, the YMCA athletic director took over and ran the little basketball program and some skating in the wintertime and so on like that. And that was our recreational program, and that was all of it.
Come a long way.
Oh, yes.
Well, and a lot of that growth can be attributed to you.
Well, it's that's it, but also having a staff, a good staff, and an educated staff. Our director at that time was a very nice guy, but he was basically a greenskeeper. He was a greenskeeper that came. We built a golf course, so our director at the time quit, retired, and so they felt. The board felt in their wisdom that they would go out and hire a greenskeeper because he knows something about running the golf course. And that is what we had for a director of parks. Well, that was all right. He was a good fellow. He did a fairly good job. But then we went, the next one we hired was a graduate of the University of Illinois in Parks and Recreation, and started out, and that's when we really started with the help of a good director and the knowledgeable background developing a real park program.
As a matter of fact, that was one of my questions. You've met a lot of professionals in your career.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think are the key attributes possessed by the top professionals in the field? What does it take to be an excellent professional in the park and recreation field?
Well,
what have you seen?
Talking from a commissioner's viewpoint, I think that the key points in being a good director first of all, you must be a good communicator. You've got to be able to communicate with the people of your community. You have to be able to communicate and get along with the other governing bodies, the city, the mayor, the superintendent of schools, especially. And you've just got to communicate with the people around you, and also to be able to direct the staff and to be able to educate and direct a park board. I think a good director of parks is going to help lead the board, and I don't think the board should resist leadership. These are the people that are professionals, and you have to do, and they're there to lead you and to direct you. And if they're a good director, they're going to be able to have the ability to lead you, and at the same time be intelligent and, shall we say, understanding of the board's wishes and the direction the board wants to go on. So he's got to be a diplomat. He's got to be a good diplomat. So he's got to be a communicator, a diplomat. He's got to be a public relations man. He's got to be a finance man. He's got to be knowledgeable of government. And I would say a good citizen. So all in all, that's about all he has to do.
Well, and the other thing that comes up, when I talk to the directors about you, who we all refer to you as Mr. Parks, they say that, you know, they like to model their career after some things that you believe in too. And integrity and honesty come out when they talk about Mr. Parks, Mike Cassidy. And that's a great characteristic that all of us need in the profession. And people can see that. That's why you've been reelected, and that's why the people really respect what you've done. So I know that you're humble and you bring that out, but when I talk to people, that's what comes out.
Well, I appreciate that.
Not only your dedication and everything, but your integrity and the honesty and those kind of things are, people are in for the long term, and people see that and they appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I certainly appreciate that.
Well, let me see, another question I had here, we have a whole list of questions for Mike. What about park districts? There have been some threats in the past of maybe putting parks under city government or county government, other means of, what do you think makes our system different here in Illinois, and why should we preserve our park district system?
Well, let's just take it from the start. First of all, Illinois is the leader in municipal and city and parks. There's no question about it. We have better parks in the state of Illinois as far as our cities and our park districts are concerned than any other state in the union practically. And the second thing, at least in my impression that we have, and the second thing is that this comes because we specialize in parks. We specialize in recreation. We have people that are trained and people that will serve in a non-political form. Many of the units of government where the park directors are appointed, they appointed primarily because of political appointment. And some of them are good because of their knowledge in recreation or in the parks field, but many of them are political appointments. In Illinois, you run for the park district, and I would say to run for it, you must have some special interest in it. And therefore, we are getting people that run for parks without any political affiliation whatsoever, and are selected by the people in the community to take care of their parks and the trust of it. And I believe the people in Illinois really treasure their parks. I know we do in Freeport, and I think that they also do in Rockford, which I'm very familiar with. Rockford is a beautiful park district. And all around us, we're part of the, putting the plug for it, we're part of the Northwest. That's 23 park districts in the Northwest corner of the state of Illinois have all got together, and we meet once every 2 months. And
both professionals and commissioners.
Professionals and commissioners all in the same boat.
Which is unique in itself. I don't think there's any other organization in Illinois that has both the professionals and the commissioners that meet regularly with that.
And it's remarkable. We sit down and we get along very well, and our officers are made up of either a professional or a park commissioner. I don't think there's any particular reason why we elect a director or to be our president of our association or a commissioner. It's just whoever happens to come along. And we have good staff, attendants, we have directors of parks, we have the superintendents of maintenance, the superintendent of recreation, all of them attending, and it works out really well.
What do you see, here we are in May 1994, less than 6 years away from the year 2000. What do you see as some of our major problems that are confronting the park district system today, and what are some of the problems in the future? What kind of advice do you have for us?
Well, the problems today are that we are getting more and more demands for recreation. There's no question to it. And it isn't only just recreation for the boys and girls or the moms and dads, it's a family recreation. We've got to start thinking about providing a recreational place for the families and a place where they can all get together and be together. And this is a challenge.
Bring back the family values. Yeah.
And we're part of it.
Absolutely.
And we are definitely part of it. And I think that the parks have got to think of more things where we can have mom and dad and the kids be able to go and enjoy a facility that's designed for all of them at the same time, where they can be together. And at the same time, we have the challenge of offering special recreation. We have the challenge of acquiring parkland and preserving it. I keep going back to Freeport because naturally I think Freeport's pretty great. And we have a wildlife or a nature preserve. We have the Oakdale Nature Preserve, which is 100 and some acres of just nothing but trails, no roads or anything else, just a parking lot and a bunch of trails. And people can get out there and hike together. And it's great to see mom and dad and the kids go out for a walk in the trails. And at the same time, we have playgrounds for the kids and everything else. But parks have got to start looking and seeing how we can help with our community problems, of offering, working with the whole community and working together to help offer recreation as one of the solutions that we have in many problems that we have today. And I think we're doing it. We have to take our older neighborhoods. We have to take our neighborhoods where we have, shall we say, the poor or the older neighborhoods that need, shall we say, reconstruction or fixing up and so on like that. And you'll find that if you maintain your parks in those neighborhoods, they turn out to be the jewel, the bright shining star in that neighborhood. And that's what has to be done. You've just got to overcome the challenge of your neighborhood and lead the way in fixing up the parks so that people will be encouraged to fix up their own homes to match the parks and so on. And I think it's very important that we lead the way in parks.
We talked earlier about park districts filling gaps, and one of them that we have, one of the challenges today is these single-parent homes. I think it's 70% of the black population in the United States, 70% of the youngsters at home today do not have a father. In the Hispanics, it's somewhere around 42 or 43%. And with the whites, 30% of the white kids do not have fathers at home. Now, this is not a racial thing because there's a lot more whites than there are blacks or Hispanics and so on. So I'm just using those statistics because it shows the tremendous impact of not having the father at home. And sometimes we, in the park and recreation field, and recreation centers, wherever, there's role models that we need to fulfill. And some of these kids, maybe we got to get more involved in, the big sister or the big brother type of programs. And I know that we're doing some of that. But any other issues that you feel that we should be addressing?
Well, I think the one thing that you're pointing out there about the family is important. And one thing we're doing in Freeport, and I think should be done all over, is to work and cooperate with all the other organizations, the YMCA, the YWCA, all of them, to go along with them and work and help their programs. I mean, they're in the recreational business. we're not in competition, we're in to work together. And I think we want to work together. I think that we should always work together. And we have programs for, we have a 36-hole golf course. We have junior golf, where the kids can come out and have, be instructed in golf and so on like that, so that they can come out with their moms, dads, and play golf. And it works out real well in all the different programs, but we've got to work with other organizations.
That's a very good point. Some of our research is showing that some of the better park districts in Illinois, the gold medal award winners and the others that we have in Illinois, aren't just addressing the current problems. They do have their own identity with their park district, but 9 out of 10 have intergovernmental cooperation. They're working with the schools, they're working with the townships, they're working with a variety of other organizations, private and public, for the benefit of their citizens.
We have beautiful cooperation with the city government and also with the school districts. We have open gym programs where we work right in the school gymnasiums and have access to the school facilities and so on like that. And it's worked out very well. And the schools have full access to all our facilities. We use it for whatever they wish to use it for. We work together entirely. In fact, their facilities are our facilities and ours are theirs, and it works out very well with working together. And we have a city government which has been very cooperative in every way.
Very good. Let me ask you, why should, we talked a little bit earlier about IAPD, but why should a new commissioner get involved in the association?
It's the greatest experience they'll have. You get so close to your own park board, and you get to think about what is happening in Freeport or what's happening in your town, and you get locked in on it. You think you're the only one that has the problems. You think you're the only one that has the solutions. You think you're the only ones that really have the parks. If you get involved in the IAPD or any of the other organizations, why? Get into committee work, you get to sit around with other commissioners and get to hear their problems.
And
Networking and understanding everything, and listening to their solutions and so on. It's almost remarkable what you'll find out, and you'll find what other communities are doing. Sure, you get the magazine, you get the newsletter and so on like that, but the old one-on-one contact is the important thing. And by working on committees, you get that contact, and you get to know around the state of Illinois. You get to share other people's problems and sharing their solutions too, because sometimes you can sit around and talk about a thing, and it works out very, very well. And I think that this broadens the commissioner. I think the commissioner should get out and really take part in state work. Just to give you an example, I recently, as you know, visited Sycamore Park District and had a real nice conversation with all their commissioners over there and their staff. And I found out several things that were very helpful to me, and at the same time I was able to share different things where they were having problems, where we could probably, how we had the same problem and how we solved it. And it worked out very, very well. So I think by having association affiliation, you're going to help yourself, you're going to help your park district, you're going to help the state of Illinois, you're going to help everybody, because it just works. That's all there is to it.
Well, I think we've learned a lesson also from your Northwest group, and what you're saying, Mike, the networking is extremely important. And now we're emphasizing, IAPD's emphasizing its commissioners' roundtable meetings, and just several commissioners from various districts. Might be only 10 districts, or it might be 4 in their vicinity, are getting together to talk about common problems. And then we send experts. If they want to talk about strategic planning, we'll send an expert up to their meeting for a roundtable, or we'll work with them on a variety of different subject areas. But I think what you all have done in the Northwest has taught all of us a lesson that we need to get together, and not just at state conferences, and not just at the annual commissioners training seminar. Those are all important, but you need to do it even more frequently to interact with other commissioners in your area. And that serves to your growth. I think you've been a promoter of that all your life.
Well, yes, it works out very well, and Just think of, just talking about the Northwest a little bit, people will say, well, we started out primarily because we found that we had a lot of small park districts in my area, lots of small park districts. And most of them did not have a full-time director, and some of them didn't even have a part-time director. There were 5 commissioners. One was in charge of buildings and grounds, the other one was in charge of program, and the other one was in charge of finance, and somebody else was in charge of record keeping and so on. And they divided the jobs up, and that was all there was. There were just 5 guys out there working to take care of the park. And they ran into lots of problems. Well, sure, they had the association to call down to Springfield and find out what was going on. Many of them were members. But at the same time, what we did was we started in forming a group where we could sit around and talk together and work together. And we went and visited each other. We helped form, I can remember Warren Park District. They came to our meeting one time. There was just, then it was Sterling, Freeport, Pearl City. Oh, I think it was Rockford. There was 3 or 5 or 6 of us. And Warren came, sent a person over and called up one of the directors and said, I'd like to come to your meeting. He came over and he said, we'd like to form a park district. So a group of us went out to Warren. We sat around and talked with them about it, got information how to form a park district, helped them get it all started out, and we formed a park district in Warren and set it up. 2 years later, they come back and they said, we got a church we want to turn into a museum. How do we do it? Well, the director from Freeport went over there, the director from Sterling went up and helped them form and set up a museum referendum. Set up for what the museum tax would be. Got the ladies of the community together on how nice it would be to have a museum. And they passed a referendum, so Warren had a museum. The next couple of years, Warren built a swimming pool. Really, Warren's now in quite a park district. Little town, 2,000 or 3,000 people.
Great story there.
It's great, and it's wonderful. It's fun. It's great. It's a lot of fun. And that's why now we're 23 strong. We, not all of them come to we go around in different communities, and it works out very well. I would like to suggest that I think that this should be happening all over the state of Illinois. I don't know how you're going to get it to happen, but it should happen. Because I think that by working together in small groups, you're going to have a stronger organization in the IAPD. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, we're trying to make that happen.
Well, that's great. That's what should happen.
Well, Mike, you've done so much for park districts, and you're affectionately referred to as Mr. Parks, but also I refer to you as the ambassador. Anytime we need somebody to go out and talk about Parks and Recreation as a commissioner's point of view, we ask people like you and Don Bresnan. You people are the living legends in the field. Ralph Cianchetti, a number of others that we're going to be interviewing on this program.
Bruce Larson.
Bruce Larson,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Great.
But what do you have left to do, Mike? I mean, have you done it all?
Oh no, good grief, no. You never get it. In fact, I hope I never do it all. I want to just keep on finding things to do. I think to do is to, first of all, in Freeport we've got a lot of work to do. We've got lots of different challenges. Right now, my main interest is, I think that 2 things. I think that foundations are important. Tax money is starting to get hard to get. Hard to find ways to raise taxes. People don't want taxes raised.
Foundations.
Foundations give you a source of revenue. It allows you to 2 ways. It allows you to get people that don't necessarily want to be a park commissioner, don't want to get involved in committees, busy people, but would like and have pride in their parks, would like to help you maybe raise some money, help you finance it. And what I'm talking about is lawyers, retired attorneys, trust officers in banks, just good people in the community. Find women in the League of Women Voters. Look for key women in the League of Women Voters. Invite them to be part of your foundation. Say, look, tax money's hard to get. We'd like to be able to raise money and really go out and get other sources of revenue. People that are interested. And what I mean by interest, make up a whole list of things that you'd like to have. We'd like to have a swimming pool. We might even like to have just a duck pond for the kids to go out and watch the ducks swim around. We might like to have a new playground. We might like to have lots of things. And you list your wish list. And those wish lists, you turn it over to the foundation, or you just put it out there and let people come along, and you're going to find that somebody's going to have their wife, or their husband, some of their children, or somebody that they want to remember it. And so they're going to name it the Sam Smith Park, the Sam Smith Playground, or in memory of Tom Jones. It doesn't make any difference. There it is. And the wonderful part of it is that this is maintained by your tax dollar, but you donated it. And it's going to be something that's going to be there for the whole community, not any one separate group. It's the whole community. Come in and walk into that park and enjoy it. I don't care about the race, the creed, or anything else. They're welcome to come into that park because it's a public park. We build it for everybody. And this is what should be done. Also, by a proper foundation, property done, and this probably would have to be done statewide, you could set up annuities. I'm interested in the park, but I don't want to invest my money in the park right now. I don't have the money to put in there. I want to. So you enter into an investment agreement through annuities. And this is a difficult and complicated thing that's being done by churches, and there's no reason why parks couldn't do it. Sure. And so we give you a income for life. When you're done, we're going to take that and ask you, what do you think when you pass along? What would you like to do with the revenues that are left? Well, I'd like to establish a trust fund so that kids can learn to swim in our town for the rest of their lives. From now on, so many $100 a year for a sporting program. Or I'd like to see you establish a playground. Any of these things. It can be done. And I think this is the challenge right now, of finding sources of revenue other than tax money, where we can ask the community to cooperate to help us create and support our parks and our recreation in our community and statewide. Because without going into too much detail, a foundation can act as a vehicle for holding property. It can act as a vehicle for accepting property. And another thing about it, somebody passes away in your community and you want to establish a memorial. People can donate to the memorial, the foundation. They can specify what they want it used for, or they can just give it to the parks and the foundation for their development. Or a foundation can have a project. If we accumulate the money for this memorial, eventually we're going to build so-and-so. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. And this is what we're going to do our memorial funds for the next 5 years until we accumulate this money. And the wonderful part of it is, it isn't going to an elected officer, it's going to the people that are the leaders in your community. They're going to be the board of directors, they're going to be the trustees of your foundation. So I would say for the parks in Illinois, think about forming a foundation. And also for the IAPD, might not be a bad idea.
You think by encouraging more local foundations, then that might be able to tie in with an IAPD foundation?
Absolutely. I don't see anything wrong with local foundations having state leadership, just like that we have an IAPD to lead the parks in Illinois.
Yeah, I talked to you about that in a telephone conversation recently. I thought your concept was great. Those people that are involved in the foundation at the local level, either them or other people from the community, if every park district that's a member of our association, or four, specifically 303 of them, would send one representative from their community to be part of the state foundation.
That's right.
And then that membership would elect their board. And that would be the governing board of the foundation. I thought that was just a great concept, and something that we need to study carefully for the future.
Just imagine that if you had one trustee for the foundation from every park district in the state of Illinois, that's 303. It's a rather unwieldy group, but we only would have one annual meeting a year. That group would then elect a board of directors, maybe 19 people or something like that, whatever you want to make it. That board of directors would meet on call once, maybe semi-annually or quarterly, regularly, but on call when, if need rises. They could then take and administer the IAPD Foundation, or whatever it may be called. At the same time, they can act as a coordinating group for all the foundations in the state, to act as a source of information of what's going on in other foundations. And we have a natural
foundation newsletter, is right.
Tie it right in with our magazine, or tie it in with anything else. Keep our operating costs down, and at the same time, be a source of revenue to supplement that old tax dollar. That's the other one. And also to create memorials, and to take it, there's even the little politics that's in park districts. This is going to be led by the leaders in the community, the people that are knowledgeable in finance, knowledgeable in law, people that are leaders in your community, because your park district is going to go out and honor somebody by asking them to be our trustee to go to the state foundation. Boy, I maybe I'm wrong, but I think it could work.
That sounds like a great idea. Well, Mr. Parks, we want to thank you on behalf of the Board of Directors, the membership of IAPD, for spending an afternoon with us talking about your visions, your background, sharing with us your knowledge of Parks and Recreation. And we want to thank you very, very much for your dedication and hard work to advance park districts around Illinois.
Well, it's been great, but it's just not only it's been people like you and people before you, but also the other board members, the IAPD, and also my own board members in my community. We've had Myron Bird and Charlie Demeter were two of the previous presidents we had in the IAPD from Freeport, and Charlie was one of the old ones way back in the 30s. And we've been really sold on the IAPD in Freeport, and I think any community in the state of Illinois that really wants to get involved, and they should get involved, their commissioners should get involved, are going to be sold on the IAPD. And Ted, you've done a great job of leadership. Great job of leadership. It's been wonderful.
Freeport Park District has been a member ever since they were formed.
We were formed in 1911 in our district.
Well, I should say ever since IAPD
Yeah,
was formed
right.
in 1928.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
In fact, I got a copy of an old bill of 1934, I think it is, where our dues were terrible high in those days. It was $35 for an annual dues.
$35.
But that's all right. We didn't get, there wasn't a whole lot of service either. It was just a group getting together and talking. That was about it. And we had a secretary. We didn't even have a director. We had a secretary in those days, if I remember rightly, looking back in the history. But that's the way it worked out.
Let's kind of cut at this point, and then let's see if there's any other questions that we might have missed, or if anything else might.
And at the same time, the sense of accomplishment that you make, and the pleasure that you actually get out of it. Because, you know, in all our communities, we look around and we have the streets, we have our parks, we have our buildings. And people stand around and they enjoy them. They really go out and enjoy their facilities they have. But somebody, somewhere, a long time ago, got involved. They built this park. They went out and raised the money. They went out and had thought enough of their community to run for office. They were the ones that really built it. Somebody did it. It just didn't blossom. Somebody did it. And we're enjoying it today. We're out walking in that park. We're out enjoying it. The kids are swinging on the swings. Somebody did it. Now it's our responsibility, in my opinion, to get involved, to see what I can do for somebody in the future. And that is what I think the challenge is for the people that are interested at all in getting involved, is your challenge to say, what I'm doing today is going to make it great for somebody in the future.
services, the
Oh,
price we pay.
service.
Our time on Earth.
Oh, but it's a pleasure. It's the fun.
If we pick up where our forefathers left, and we hope the next generation.
Well, that's the way we make a country.
That's what's really built America. It's volunteerism.
You bet it is in reverse.
I'll never forget when I had an Italian ambassador come over to Springfield and visit the United States. And I said to him, well, what do you notice some of the differences between the United States and Europe? And he says, the way your people volunteer. He said, that's really how democracy works over here. And he says, I don't see that in other countries, the volunteerism that you have in America. And that's what's really built our nation. That's what's built the Park and Recreation field was started by volunteers.
I think that volunteers, but why do people volunteer? People volunteer. You know, we're all just a little bit selfish. Let's face it. If I volunteered for something and I didn't get any pleasure or self-help seeing that I was accomplishing something, or I was getting enjoyment out of it, or knowing I'm doing something that's well worthwhile, I wouldn't bother volunteering. And when you get out, I don't, you know, of course I'm partial, I'll admit it, but in the parks, by volunteering to work in the parks, you look for what you have, and look what the future holds, and what you can dedicate to them, and knowing that it's a unit of government that's going to see that it's preserved and it's going to go on. It's an inspiration to people to volunteer to go ahead, I think, Ted, honestly, I really do.
So you think that your work is meeting some of your needs as well? I mean,
yeah.
you're just not
I get-
fulfilling the needs of other people, but you're
It's-
getting your own rewards.
It's fun. It's fun. I enjoy it. I think it's the greatest thing in the world. It's a challenge. You know, I'm retired, and it's just like anything else. It's a clock on the wall. If you don't wind it up and let it run, it's going to run anymore. And I think that by keeping mentally and physically active, facing the problems that we have, facing the challenges we have in the park district, keeps the old blood running well, it keeps the brain active, it keeps you physically active. And boy, I tell you what, I think if you want to really keep going, why, it's the main thing to do. And that's for the older person. For the younger person, it is the contacts they'll make, it's the sense of accomplishment, the recognition that they'll get in their community. All of it goes. That develops the young person, it allows the older person to really enjoy his park work, and the sense of accomplishment into something he's going to pass along. So I think that, boy, I can't see how you can miss.
That's great. You know, I had an opportunity to talk to a gentleman that was, I think he's either his 100th or his 101st birthday. And you know, you always ask people like that, well, what do you contribute to your longevity and so on? And you get a variety of different responses, but I think he mentioned something that, two things that maybe you've experienced as being a commissioner. Maybe I'm wrong, but I want to ask you about it. He said, first of all, a person should be happy. Find things that make them happy. Maybe being a commissioner is part of that. Secondly, he said, always have something to look forward to. Those two things. Now, you know, you can add to that list a lot of things.
That's right.
I think you can find that in being a commissioner, that, you know, you're having an impact on that community, tremendous impact. You're seeing people in a happy environment, so there's got to be some rewards with that, in being a commissioner.
Oh yeah, I agree with you 100%. Exactly what you say. That you do feel a sense of accomplishment from walking around. I can remember when I was in grade school and high school. I used to go out in the park and go fishing, walk up and down the creek. Today I go out and walk up and down the creek and drive by, and there's the kids fishing. Brings back a lot of memories.
Yeah, doesn't it? That's great.
It's great.
It's
Wonderful.
great that they still have those kind of opportunities.
Oh yeah, it's just wonderful.
Okay, did you get all that part? So,
We got kind of off on an extra. Many of the different things in park law were attributed to Judge Burton. He helped do a lot of things. He was a representative, state senator, and a state Supreme Court judge. And you didn't renew him, but he was quite an individual.
right, yeah.
Oh, he was great. He was a wonderful man.
So in the early years of park districts, he had a tremendous impact.
Well, yes. He was a state representative and the park board commissioner at the same time.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, we need more like that.
I don't know whether it was legal or not, but it was happening.
Can we run you for state rep?
Yeah, I always got to get, I don't know whether it was legal or not, but it went along. And then he went.
It worked.
He went along, and when he retired, I get a kick out of it. When he retired from the Supreme Court, he was still a Supreme Court judge. He had an office in Freeport, but he is still a Supreme Court, and he announced his retirement. And just about the time he announced his retirement, we had a vacancy on the board. In other words, the commissioner resigned because of ill health. And so we sat around and talked, who are we going to appoint? Somebody said, I read in the paper the other day, Bert's going to resign, or retire from the Supreme Court. Well, he's not doing anything now, we might as well put him back on the park board. And we went down and asked him. I can remember we walked into his office and said, Judge Bert, yes, what are you guys here for today? Well, we came down to just suggest that you're going to be going off the Supreme Court. Yes, yes, gonna hang it up, he said. Well, we said, we just brought in a new hat for you to put on. Well, what do you mean? Well, how about coming back to be a park commissioner? He sat there a little bit, he kind of looked at us. He said, you're not kidding me. No, we're not kidding you at all. I said, we could come along, we'd like to have you. Well, he said, well, he said, that's something to think about. He said, I kind of was wondering what I was really going to do. Well, so anyway, it was Doc Tucker and I went down. And Don Tucker and myself went down. He said, I'll think about it. He said, go home and talk to the missus. He said, we'll see what it might be. Oh, about the next day, why, John was president of the board at the time. We rotate our presidency. We take turns. And John called John up and he said, I'll do it. I said, that'll be good for you. So he ran, and of course, as law has it, the next time that we had a park district election, the judge ran for office. And to get a kick out of Freeport, we don't have a whole lot of campaigns. We do it just, I mean, you don't really get out.
Kind of low key.
Low key campaign. We don't spend, you didn't spend any money, did you?
I wasn't even in town during the election.
So, we have low-key campaigns. We always have quite a few people run, but still at the same time, everybody runs and just offers their name, and the newspaper runs a couple articles about what they think about what the parks should have and so on like that, and that's about it. And so the judge ran, but the judge wanted to have a campaign. I said, we don't campaign, Mark. Well, I've never ran for office yet that I didn't campaign.
He enjoyed the campaign part.
So, yeah, sure, that was part of it. So so anyway, but we went over to the radio station and got on the public broadcast and had call-ins. He volunteered to do it. And he had a good time with that. And so the judge got elected. He took it with quite some pride. He carried the ticket. And that was great. Mm-hmm. And he was on for 6 more years, and after the end of 6 years, he was getting, so he felt that he had done enough. But it was great. He was a great individual. Marv was wonderful.
Mike, let me ask you one last question. How would you like to be remembered?
Well, that's quite a question. I think that just to doing something for the community, of contributing something for the future, of making things a little brighter, a little better, and making things move along a little smoother. That's about it.
You've done all that.
Thank you. That's about it.
That's great.